What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Masculine Mastery Summit. And today I am joined with Oto Gomes. Otto, what's up, my brother? How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you again, Christopher. I love connecting with you. I feel like these topics are so needed right now.
So needed, and exactly why we have decided to put on this summit, because right now there's just there's resources out there for men, but I wanted to gather some of the top names out there in one place to help create transformation for men. And the topic we're speaking to today in wealth mastery, and your background, which we've already kind of listed your bio, and so people have an idea about your work, and some people might already be familiar with you, but I really want to dive into this idea around wealth. And I know it's a very large topic, and so we can kind of break it down, but this is a common roadblock for all humans, right? Because of our limiting beliefs, because of the way we've grown up and all of that. But specifically for men, we are geared to wanting to drive forward in our lives and create meaning and purpose. And oftentimes, in order to be able to really do what we want to do in the world, we have to consider that money is very important in this conversation. And I
Mhm.
know wealth goes beyond money, but let's just start the conversation there. So, based on your experience, based on the people that you've served over the years and everything you've experienced in your own personal journey, what would you say is the most common limitations that are hindering men from actually stepping into a greater sense of wealth in all areas of their life?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that I normally say is without health, there is no wealth. It's impossible to be wealthy if you're not healthy, physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, mentally. And so what I've noticed is that this creates a limitation. The old system, the old paradigm of doing business was very disconnected or cut off at the neck, disconnected from emotions, from your gut, whereas it's more driven by facts and intellect. And so one of the limitations I've noticed is or division that's happening. It's happening right now as we're speaking in these last like maybe 10 years or so since 2008, I'd say. There's been this division on doing business as or how you perform in the doing the business as. And it's this separation between the divisive way of doing business where somebody needs to lose for me to win. Lone wolf paradigm. I got to do this all on my own and nobody's going to help me. Being more dependent on centralized systems because we can't trust each other, right? There's a distrust that is happening right now. And then the other side of the spectrum is doing business more connected, more transparent, where a rising tide raises all ships. And so I think that awareness of those belief systems, like the belief systems that we were indirectly taught by our parents, our grandparents, society, mainstream media, education, the more we can become aware of those belief systems and the limitations in those belief systems, the more we can start to tap into true wealth. Because, like I said, I don't think that these systems, especially the centralized systems, are there to help us thrive. It's not. It's there to help us stay in the box. Really, it's not really there to help us. I'd say it's there to just keep you in the norm or in the mainstream narrative, as opposed to, hey, here's a different way to look at it, and gaming it this way, you can actually benefit and make abundance. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to actually dive down that rabbit hole a little bit, because it's really important to explore all of that and what's been transpiring and where we're moving to in this sort of new paradigm and what we get to create, right? Because we
Mhm.
live in an inside out reality, and the reflection of what we're seeing outside is just a reflection of what's experienced in inside. And so it's up to us to really break down these old systems and paradigms. But before we get into that, I actually have a question for you that I think is important to frame this entire conversation. And it is like, what does wealth mean to you? Like, what is your definition of wealth?
I want to say that wealth to me means doing what I want when I want. Because wealth, the word wealth, even, even being so directly connected to the word health. just a one letter difference. I think it just means the ability to do what you want when you want. It's like with health, it's doing what you want with your body. With wealth, it's using the resources or the abundance that you embody. I think that's the big one right there. There is the belief of wanting to be rich or the belief of abundance, and then there's the embodiment of being rich or the embodiment of abundance. Uh, they say to become the reality you want. And so I think it really is important to, again, become aware of these layers of the limitations and then start to actually embody the energy around it. And then that will bring you closer towards law of manifestation. There's all these universal laws that we haven't been taught in society or in education. And these are laws. If anything, I feel like in the education system, we've been taught more of the theories and not the lawful concepts, the ones that are actually in action playing. So awareness, embodiment, and practice. That's that first step to really tapping into true abundance, in my opinion.
Beautiful. And, I think if we can sum everything up into like one word, there is like to be able to do what you want when you want. That's like freedom, right? It's external freedom and internal freedom to become free externally, feeling that freedom within, right? And that's through your awareness, your embodiment, and your practice, right? And all of that creates that freedom to then translate outside. And perhaps we'll dive deeper into that because I think there's probably some curiosity there. But just to kind of set things up even more, just talking about sort of our history, which you've outlined beautifully in the beginning of this conversation. But like, what we've seen is, and I will even take from my own personal story, us men being programmed to go to school, get this job, chase the dollar, and live that standard American dream, which we all know is flawed and bullshit. And we find ourselves stuck in a place that we don't want to be, and we are feeling empty inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, it's like living and going in the corporate world, following and getting my master's degree and climbing the corporate ladder to find out like what the fuck am I even doing with myself, right? And I think so many men are there right now, and it's like, how do I escape this prism, this matrix that I've found myself in? What is the step here? How do I get myself untangled from all of these cords that I've plugged into? So maybe we could start there. And I don't know if there's anything you want to riff on there, but I feel like it's a really, really cool place to begin.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great place. I think what's happening here, I've heard this recently, that there has been this push towards weakening men or creating weak men. And I've seen many videos around this, around ideological subversion. There's this interview with this person named Yuri Bezmenov. He's an ex-KGB agent who talks about ideological subversion and the 4 layers of infiltration that happens. And one of the first ones is demoralization. And so demoralization happens in the education system, mainstream media, and I believe there are many layers or many tools being used to demoralize. And what is the practical demoralization? Like, what's actually happening? Well, I believe there is this demoralization to become the employee. This filter that, like, oh, there is no option but this. You have to do the 9 to 5. This is what success means. Grind, hustle, the hustle job, right? It's like all these little words and paradigms that have been normalized to keep us in this mindset of dependency, and even to the point where saying that dependency is good, it's okay. We're supporting each other. It's for the greater cause. We're all in this world together, and I think that is the biggest through line of demoralization and the weakening of men, because in the current reality that we're in, this idea or American dream of, going to the 9 to 5 and having job security and buying a home, a forever home that you're going to mortgage, that idea, that dream is dead. We don't live in that reality anymore. We live in a reality where you have to be an entrepreneur, where you have to have this mindset where it's based on strategy. And how do I gain this? How do I find the gap of opportunity, the arbitrage? It's really about finding your uniqueness, finding your passion, finding the thing that you really feel fulfilled and joy with, and then try and figure out a way to monetize it. We have the resources, we have the tools available to us. It's just a matter of pursuing it and doing the education to find it. But that's what I believe is the big takeaway that I've been getting, is that difference between this idea of being an employee as opposed to being an idea of an entrepreneur, or a mindset of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I feel like we're very much in that transitional period right now, right? Where it's like this old paradigm in which we were just speaking about, it's been left for dead, but we still find ourselves kind of in the middle ground, like figuring out what it actually looks like, right? Now we live in this age where we do have technology at our disposal. We can be working online, we can be pursuing our passions and providing a service to the world. And I think, that's the key part. You mentioned something really important about passion, right? Us men, I feel it's so important for us to really uncover. A lot of times our passions have been so buried, and because we've been stuck in that hustle and grind mode, it's important to uncover what those are. And then, really we are meant as humans to be of service to the whole. As we're a service to the whole, we're service to ourselves as well, right? Because we're pursuing our passion and we're serving ourselves because, well, if we look at the spiritual ideology, we're all really one. So, that in itself is another conversation. But looking at a man right now, let's say somebody listening to this is in this period, it's like, okay, well, I know that I want to switch. I know that I need to make the move to something else, something greater. It feels like something's missing. So like, what are, what are some of the first steps that somebody would take to actually make this jump and to move into this new sort of life, this entrepreneurial lifestyle?
Yeah. Somebody asked me one time, what's the meaning of life? And this was literally the first thing that came into my mind. It was find your uniqueness,
Mm.
practice your uniqueness, and then share your uniqueness. So, meaning like find the thing that you are specifically good at, no matter what it is, no matter what industry it is. I heard a interview recently by Rory Vaden. It was on the Ed Linetti show, and he was talking about the differences between personal brands and digitizing reputation right now. And what's happening is they took a poll and saw that the majority of people want their doctor, their lawyer to have an Instagram account, to have a social media account, because we want to know who you are. So there's almost like the shift happening right now towards um, uh, not caring what your degree is, or what school you went to, or what your title is, or how much money you have. They want to know who you are. Are you a good person? Are you a bad person? To whatever whatever perception they have. But here's some statistics: 68% of America wants their doctor to have a personal brand, 58% their lawyer, 55% their financial advisor. So this shift towards digitizing reputation, in my opinion, is giving us back control of the digital legal version that they've always had control of. Like now we can create a version that we have control of, and then we can start to bring together the audience, or the people that will magnetize towards you. So first step, find that uniqueness, find that thing that you're passionate about, that you can do every day for free, no matter what. Like you don't need validation, and you don't need money. You can just do it for yourself. If you focus on that thing and keep practicing it to a point to where you feel confident, and then start sharing it, that's the way to disconnect from dependency on centralized systems. And then you can start to really create your community, create the decentralized community that's yours. And then, they say, I think the number is you only need about 100 person to make, four or five figures a month. It's not many people.
Yeah, considering the amount of people in the world, and if you're smart enough and you niche down and you find that sort of, yeah, that ground where you can play in, I mean, that's beautiful. And I think one of the biggest things for people listening to this as well is like, it doesn't have to always be this grand, like, hey, I'm quitting tomorrow and I'm going to be doing this. It's like you could still collect this paycheck, and you can still pursue your passions on the side and then make that sort of transition. Sometimes it has to be abrupt, and sometimes life will, knock you over the head with a 2x4 and say, hey, you've had enough, it's time to go this way. But I think there
I
is,
prefer those.
you know what, I've had many
Shake
of
me
them.
out of
So
it, life.
because sometimes we're too fucking asleep to actually like realize that, we just need to move on. But yeah, that's amazing. And so also a key point here is around this centralized and decentralized system. So let's break that down as well, because then we can start getting into more of the wealth talk and creating passive income and all of these different things that come from that. So break down centralized and decentralized, in layman terms, or however you want to break that down.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely, I'm glad you asked that question that way, because there are layers to
Yeah.
centralization. And the one that I like to focus on is the practical. And what that has to do with is centralized servers or centralized processing. So anytime we access our banks, for example, or we access Google or Facebook or Instagram, we access these systems. Why are we accessing them? To connect to each other, right? To be able to transact and create energetic exchange, so that we can feel connected. Really, I think that's a bigger picture. But what's happening is when it goes through central servers or central authority, that means that that entity has more than 51% of the processing power of the information. So practically speaking, it means that if you own more than 51% of the processing power in an ecosystem, you can make changes to it without the persons, or without the individuals that are using that software to know. They wouldn't know. And so on Facebook, for example, you can go on there one day and then the next day it'll be a different color or it'll have different features. And so the changes are made without you knowing. Decentralization. So that's centralization, right? That's a central server. Think of them as gatekeepers. Like even here, we're talking to each other. We're going through probably 3 or 4 different gatekeepers. We're going through Riverside. We're going through Cox Internet. We're going through Apple's operating system. Maybe you have the same or a different operating system. So there's all these gatekeepers in between us. So that's centralization. Centralization facilitates so many things for them, for the few, especially when it comes to censorship or stopping narratives, other narratives from being, presented. Decentralization, when it comes to servers, is now the information of the network is housed individually on every single device or every single user of that protocol or of that program. And so instead of me connecting to a central server to then connect to you, I just connect to you directly because we have the same operating system. We have the same software. And then because you have a phone, I have a phone, 2 separate devices, we just connect directly to each other. And so that's blockchain. That's the decentralization of blockchain. And so that's one form of decentralization, but there's so many. There's decentralizing food, creating your own gardens, joining a co-op, decentralizing. What else? Decentralizing electricity. I mean, that's a possibility. Generators. When you have your own generator, you have your own source of electricity. Well, imagine if a bunch of people had their own and then they created excess power and then it goes to somewhere where they can monetize it. And so there are ways to decentralize the way we transact with each other. That's the bigger key here. And what I love that's happening with blockchain is now giving us the ability to go back to bartering. And so it's almost like we're going to ancient technology now, or ancient concepts, but using new technology to facilitate it. Digital bartering basically is what we can potentially do, or can do today. So those are the 2 separate things. Those are the 2 different things. And centralization is essentially what the elites want because it facilitates the power and control. Decentralization is the exact opposite. It'll give us back the power and discernment for ourselves.
Yeah, that's a really, really important point. I really appreciate you explaining that. It was really beautifully said. And I think, right now, again, it's in this transitionary period, we're seeing, of course, the resistance that's going to be coming from the centralized systems against the decentralized systems. And we're playing sort of this game And I feel like it's still going to continue to play until just the old systems just finally crumble, because but they're not going to go down without a fight. And so there's going to be this period where we're going to have to find ourselves and find our communities, like you said before, and I think we've just been existing in this hierarchical structure for so long that now maybe we get to play on more of a horizontal plane. There's still decision makers, there's still council members, there's still leaders here, but there's more opportunity for other people to have input into this system, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I see it. I don't even see it as like it being a fight moving forward. I think that it's almost like you were in a relationship with a codependent relationship with a narcissist, and now you're waking up to it, and then they're realizing that you're waking up to their BS, and so they're like, wait, no, and they're trying to keep it alive, and they're doing everything they can to keep it alive, but you're like, okay, get out of here. Let me just go over here and create my own thing. And so I think moving forward, that's what we're going to experience. At least those that are going to start to become aware, there will be their system will still keep functioning. So imagine right now it's like this big bubble, the matrix, right? It's like this big matrix bubble, and it's still functioning. And then our little bubble, this new way of doing business, this new way of transacting with each other, it's a little tiny right now, small. But as people become aware of this one, they're going to go, I don't want this anymore. Let me go to this one now and use this. And then this one will start to grow and grow and grow. More eyes on it, more use, more adoption. And then this one will just start getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And those that stay in the matrix one, they'll go deeper into the fear and go deeper into the destruction. And so it'll just be a choice at the end of the day. Awareness and choice. It's not going to be something that they're going to force on you. That I believe to be wholeheartedly true. It's going to be an awareness on yourself and who you identify with. Here's a big one. If you identify with your physical body, with the physical reality plane of existence, then you start to see the separation between that and the legislative system. What happens to most is that they are identifying with the legal digital ID. And so if you identify with that, then those systems, because of contract law, we self-implicate. We go, yeah, that's me on the license. When in reality, when lawfully speaking, it's not. It's a whole separate entity. And so that who you identify with will really determine who your daddy is. Is the government your daddy or your own daddy?
Mm. Wow. Yeah, that's a big distinguishing factor. And I'm glad you brought that back, because you said the first step is awareness. So it's having awareness that, one, we've been operating in this sort of shadow for a very long time. And now that it's coming to light and things are being exposed, we now have a sovereign choice that we can make. And this is where the conversation around the wealth transfer begins to happen, that we begin to then, how do we take our money that's been existing in this system for X amount of years to this new system and begin making decisions for ourselves, our loved ones, our families, in a way that actually makes sense for us. And that empowers us. And that also creates more wealth, right?
Yeah.
Monetarily speaking. So maybe walk us through that. I think a lot of times with these sorts of conversations, and I know even for myself, it's like analysis paralysis. You're like, okay, so I have this right here and I know this exists, but like, how do I go about doing this? I know you teach this in your course and you have things out there that you're teaching all of this, but like, what's kind of like the first steps here of how to really begin to move this system and move into a new paradigm?
Yeah, a lot of people are like, "Which crypto do I buy? Where do I go in first?" And it's like, "Oh, hold on, let's pull two steps back here for a second." So there is, the first thing I usually share is try to become aware of the narrative. Try to become aware of the current narrative when it comes to crypto and blockchain, because they are pushing a narrative right now to perpetuate their power, right? To stay in power. And so one of the ways they're doing that is by taking the same traditional banking concepts, the flow of money, right? It's the metaphysical flow of money that you can't put your finger on or point to and go, look at this. They're taking the same concepts and coding it and building it into the blockchain. And so it's the same traps, just on a new tool, and it's not good. And so first things first is become aware of that narrative. Become aware of like what does it mean to be structured with traditional banking concepts. Um, Once you become aware of that, then you can start to see the differences and start to see the differences in the two systems, because one of them is flowing money to the top, the pyramid flow, and the other one is more toroidal based. Okay. I'd go as far as say that because of the infiltration into crypto, 99% of the projects are like unconscious scams. They're developed by coders that didn't work on their relationship to money, and they just took the same traditional concepts and put it on the blockchain. So that's very important, like recognizing those types of flows. Then the next step would be to learn the basics of transferring, of storage. Very simple little things that you can learn. I actually have a 90-minute free training that teaches that. So if you guys want that, I'll send it to you. And the first thing you can do physically, okay, your first action step that you can start to do is to transfer the Swift cash, so the fiat that is in their servers, transfer it out of their servers and put it into your own server. Meaning, go into a variety of stable coins or something that is one-to-one to the fiat dollar. Do the research. There's some stable coins out there that aren't very safe, so you have to know the differences, and that goes into the educational side of things, where you're not just trusting because somebody with a Instagram following tells you to. Even me. Do your own research. But first step is take the energy, take the accumulated savings out of their hands and just put it in your own hands. There's no investing there. You're not on the volatility of a crypto because it's, crypto is volatile. You're in a stable coin. You're one-to-one to the dollar. And on top of that, there's benefits to doing this, because in the fiat side, what is backing the dollar? Debt. Debt is backing that dollar. Okay. And collateral based on the human element. In crypto, the stable coin, there's two layers that is backed by it. There's the backing of the Bitcoin. So there's a Bitcoin market that is pushing up against all stable coins. And so to keep the dollar value at the dollar one-to-one, the Bitcoin price goes up and down based on the dollar price of Bitcoin. And it just keeps that in one location, right? It keeps it stable. And then the second layer to that is the mining, right? The crypto mining, the electricity, the processing of regenerative electricity. Most people don't know this. It's more than like 70% of Bitcoin mining specifically it comes from regenerative resources. So from like hydroelectricity, solar electricity, wind. And so imagine Bitcoin in this way, where it's a way to store regenerative electricity instead of putting it into batteries, right? That's what they've always done. Here in Arizona, they store electricity from solar in batteries, and then they put it on a truck and then they ship it to the city to then use it. So imagine not having to do that. All that costs, you can just put it straight into a Bitcoin and then transfer the Bitcoin, the value of that electricity that you generate. So that would be the first step, I would say, is take hold or secure your accumulated savings in your own server. And doing just that alone, if everybody was to do that, we would be taking away what they're using to siphon from us. That's what they're using. They're using money, that tool, to siphon our energy, our output of energy from our bodies.
And that's where the metaphysical aspect comes into it, which is always an interesting, way to look at things as well, because it is all tied in together. There is no separation there. And I guess, thinking from a listener's perspective here, we transfer our money into a one-to-one stable coin, right? And you're saying basically, and I don't want to say that you're giving financial advice, because I know you're not, but as far as let's say I was to transfer all of my money to a stable coin, how would I go about then living my daily life, paying my bills that I need to pay in the 3D world and all of that, using this money that's in my stable coin?
Yeah. So when I'm teaching this, one of the analogies I give is, imagine there's a river, and you're on one side of the river, and the other side and you're in the matrix side, and then the other side of the river is your freedom, right? It's where you're going to be sovereign. And so there are stepping stones. To get across, you have to get a stone and put it down, and then now you can step. And then you get the next stone and you put it down, and now you can step. And so you have the stepping stones are very individualized. They're very specific to the individual and what their needs are. So with that said, you can have stepping stones that have different ways of interacting with the matrix system. One of them is there is a stepping stone called BitPay, for example. BitPay allows you to get your crypto, send it to the wallet, and then within 30 seconds, sell the crypto into a gift card. It's like a gift debit card. And then it's a MasterCard. So you can use it around the world in literally 30 seconds. I've used it in Mexico. I've used it in Europe. I've used it here in the US very easily. So that's one way. Another way is, there are over 20,000 companies globally right now. Actually, more than that. That was 20,000. That number was from like 2017. So I'm sure it's like way over now. Many thousands of companies that accept crypto directly. One of them, I'll give you an example, is Expedia. Expedia.com will accept Bitcoin. And so you can right there book your airplane, your car rental, and a hotel, all with Bitcoin. And then I would say the last piece would be to one of the stepping stones being a bridge stone, meaning finding an exchange that has connection to both sides. So there are, and there are also considered banks now. For example, Gemini.com, that is not just a crypto exchange, it's also an FDIC insured bank. And so you have FDIC insurance at 250,000. It has the same, regulations and same kind of requirements as a bank does. And so you can actually pay bills through it. They have their own debit card. So there are options. There are many options to interact with the matrix system. But my opinion is try to cut dependency as much as possible, because little by little, that's the frog in boiling water. They're going to be tightening those dependencies as much as possible. And so using systems that are not dependent on them is key now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I think, again, my suggestion to all the people listening, go check out your free stuff and also even your deeper courses, because I know you have a lot of information and stuff there that obviously could take hours to speak here. So we talked about the awareness piece. You also mentioned practice and embodiment. So maybe we move into that area, maybe to round out the conversation here. So what would be kind of, if we move into the practice and embodiment piece, what would be some of the wisdom you would provide there?
Yes, this is probably the most important layer that most don't really look at when they're trying to tap into abundance or make money or get into wealth. They're not really looking at their individual relationship to transactional energy. That's the thing. It's not just relationship to money, right? Money is the tool, and then there's the act of transacting. And so like I can go to you and I can scratch your head and you can scratch my back and we just transact, right? You did something for me, I did something for you, we're good to go. Money is just one of the ways. And so the only way that I've noticed is, or it makes it easy for an individual to become aware of their own relationship to money, it was to provide embodiment challenges. So in my course or in my container, my Master Heart, what we do is every week we provide you with a challenge. So something that you have to do on a daily basis to start to really feel how you really react to any given facet. There's 6 different ways that you can look at your relationship to money. And so we go through those different ways and provide the challenges that, align with the facet. So I can give you 2 examples here. One example is with any change, right? Anytime you're trying to change your habit or trying to change something in your life, there is resistance. Right? It doesn't feel good. It's uncomfortable. And there's also sometimes a mix up in most where they'll feel like, oh, it's negative. That means I shouldn't do it. It's like, oh, wait, like fine tune into that. Is it negative because your gut your intuition is tapping into something ancient and it's telling you this is not good? Or is it your own little limitation on that specific relationship because you just didn't normalize it? Or maybe you did normalize it too much to where now that's what you're listening to. So that first layer is like becoming aware of how you relate to it, how you react to it, how you feel with it. And it's all through these challenges. So the first one is resistance. The challenge I like to do is you have to choose one very challenging activity and you have to do it every day at the same time. So you set an alarm and you have to do that challenge every single day for a week. And so, it could be doing 10 jumping jacks or singing the verse of your favorite song. I had a student one time saying, it's very difficult to talk to my dad, so I'm going to call him for 2 minutes. Just little things like that. But the point is, and doing it at the exact same time, it forces you to do it in locations where it might not be the right time to do it. I had someone do the jumping jacks in a grocery store. So, uh, again, it's to create an opportunity for yourself to feel the energy. And then you have to be curious in that moment and go like, oof, gosh, my throat tightened up, my chest felt like a sword went through it and I couldn't move, but I did it anyway. And then I pushed through it. Now I feel great. It's like taking all those variables into account. And then here's another one. I'll give you, it's really cool. It's called the flow state, right? So if you've ever done anything you really love or you're passionate about and you're so in it that time stops, it's like, oh my gosh, 3 hours went by. Oh, I lost track of time. That's the flow state. And I believe that is that's a state of being that we should be in all the time. That's what I believe. I think that we actually have the ability to turn it on, turn it off if we want to as well. But if you're not in flow, then you're in survival mode. That's my belief. Just because of the way that I feel in my body. So again, it's just these challenges, and what's the practice for that one, so you guys have it. So for flow state is find one thing that you can do for free, no matter what. You don't need money, you don't need validation, and you do that thing every day. So that usually helps the person at least find what their passion is or what feels good in their body.
I really love that. I love how you're connecting the resistance then with the passion, right? Because oftentimes what stops us from doing anything, it's the resistance. It's the mind comes up with excuses. There's procrastination, there's self-sabotage, there's all of these things that we do on a daily basis, oftentimes unconsciously. And so to bring that into awareness and then also into practice, that's great. And then the flow state, I love that as well, because I think oftentimes it's like we even make excuses when it comes, we might even know our passions, but we make excuses of why we can't do that, right? We don't have enough time or whatever it is. But I guess from these two practices, what have you seen as results from some of your students and people that have been a part of your programs?
I think the biggest takeaway from most has just been really their awareness to how their family dynamics have affected them, and ancestral trauma, you can call it that. When you get taught a downline of traditions, and if you don't do the tradition, you're shamed. And so I think that was probably been the biggest peel back for most when it comes to these embodiment challenges. They just start to become aware of their own relationship, right? Of the way that they individually react based on what they were indirectly taught. And then that opens up the door to that's Pandora's box when you start to connect it to your family and to childhood. Because then that you start to peel back the little layers, and then you go, oh, what about this? What about this? And then it just opens up so many doors. But in my journey for myself, I've learned that it all stems back to that. It's all connected to childhood trauma mostly. And then we create the agreements until we're 8 years old. And then we normalize the behavior by experience that gets reinforced, and it reinforces through experience.
Yeah. And that right there is probably the biggest point to any of the conversations we're actually having on this summit. It's all coming back to really overcoming and healing and integrating all of these things that we've experienced as children, and now how these are impacting our lives from actually stepping into our true sovereignty, power, and potential. And, that right there is the key to our freedom. And so when we can begin to unlock some of these things within ourselves, that truly is really where all of us need to be focusing and doing the work. And yeah, I guess just to play into that just a bit, because I know this is an important part of the wealth conversation, right? A lot of the stories that we've gathered from that time period of, especially the formative years of 0 to 7, where, we gather all this information, and how that translates into our money stories, and how we actually not only perceive money, but how we are able to interact with money, and whether we are able to create wealth or we are living in poverty consciousness, so like all of that. And again, I know it's a deeper conversation, but like maybe some of the key points there that you would like to distill around that could be useful to somebody listening.
Well, I mean, I think one thing that I think I mentioned this to you before we got on the live, is, you know, the the relationship to money, like the pursuit of wealth, is going to really be determined on how that initial stages of growing up was. I've noticed in my students that one of the correlations that I've made for the students is how one perceives themselves in the dynamic of the family is how they relate to transactional energy. Because I think like when we're in those initial phases up until we're 8 years old, we're experiencing that for the first time. If you have siblings or parents, we all have parents, but any kind of relationship that you have in your life, you start to learn how you relate to transacting with each other, and how the transacting happened at those early stages. Usually, not always, but usually is how we're going to relate to money, or at least to transactional energy. So that's why it's so important. That's why it's so important to become aware of those layers and really start to look at, what kind of agreements did you make in your life? What kind of what kind of belief systems did you normalize for so long that now it became the normal? It's not about questioning just for the sake of questioning. I think it's questioning to determine if the habit is still constructive. If it's still good, keep it up. If it's making you happy, bringing you joy, keep it up. But if it's not, if you bring awareness and then you realize it's not being constructive, then you need to make a choice. Do I keep doing this and keep going down and being miserable, or do I do the difficult work, which will still be difficult, right? It's still going to be uncomfortable, but it's not going to be forever. Now I can start to make change.
Hmm. And just to clarify here, when you're speaking about, this transactional energy between you and your family, siblings, parents, and so forth, can you dive into that a little bit more? Is that like based on what you're saying is how we're interacting with each other and the way that, yeah, if you just want to dive into that a little bit more, it'd
Yeah,
be
it's more
helpful.
about worth.
Hmm.
So how we embody worth is what gets created or constructed based on the relationship that we have with transacting. So I'll give you kind of a little bit of structure example. When we are asked something of us, and it requires to do some activity or something, uh, we have two choices. When you're asked the question, you can choose from a place of embodied or grounded state, where you actually process and you go, do I want to do this? Is this something that I feel will bring value to my life? And then so that's internalizing self-worth, because now you're seeing the value in yourself. Or it could be the opposite, which is the externalized self-worth, where it's a need for validation, or a need to feel loved, or a need to feel connected. I would say for most, that's probably where we are, where most are. That's where I was, at least. I'll speak for myself. That's where I was growing up. And so I was in constant need of external validation, to the point where I actually found I found pride in this. I became a chameleon, where I could chameleon myself into any situation so everybody would love me, and there would be no tension. Again, all this externalized validation needs. And so that put my self-worth out of my body, to where now I was in constant pursuit of this black hole, right? This thing that was never going to fill me up. And so that's the biggest take. That's why it's so important to be aware of that dynamic. And so, practically speaking, what does that mean, right? It's how you perceive it. It's in the perception. It's not the interaction itself. People can ask for things and you can say no. It's how we perceive the request. It's how we perceive what we do with the request. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And that narrative and what we tell ourselves about our own worthiness, of course, plays into the money and
A
how
hundred. I
we're
mean, that's like
interacting with
top
money.
number one in how we perceive our relationship to transacting with each other. We just now it's just a new tool. Oh, money, and then because we've normalized the behavior so much, it feels good. It feels good to be in that paradigm. So that's how you're going to interact with it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one for sure. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. Um, Before we head off, I wanted to just leave the floor open for you. If there was a heartfelt message that you wanted to share with the men listening, based on everything you've been doing for several years as it pertains to this topic around wealth, or anything else that you feel called that is really pertinent right now for people to hear. The floor is yours.
So in my own journey, I've been learning that to what it means to be a strong man in a lot of ways, and I'm learning now that to be a strong man is to take into account or take or strategize with the variable of legacy, of generational wealth, of the seven generations ahead of us. It's really easy to get sucked into the quick gratification and the quick buck and the quick and wanting things instant, and only focusing on the short term. Like, how can I focus on the future if I'm in survival mode? And so I want to stress this and invite all the men listening to really start to allow your actions to incorporate the variable of legacy, of generational wealth, even if you don't have kids, because we are the generation where the kids that are being born are going to grow up in. And so the more we can take that into account, I believe the less that matrix bubble will thrive. It'll start to diminish as long as we focus on the legacy and focus on generational wealth.
And I think that's almost like an inbuilt thing when we tap into our true essence as men. It's like legacy is one of those words that continues to pop up, right? It's like, what can I do, as what we were saying in the beginning of this conversation, to be of service and to serve through our passions, and also through that, why not be able to create this generational wealth that can be passed down and that can be spread throughout the future generations? And I think we are also here to be of service to the feminine, to the planet, to not even just the feminine externally, but the feminine within us, right? And to serve that, and the children and all of that. Like you said, even if we don't have children, we to really be a good steward of this earth, and to really create a world in which everybody wants to live in, and create a better and brighter future for all. And so I think that takes all of us. It takes the
Have
tr-
babies. Go have babies. That's what I mean. That's truly what I mean by legacy. And it's not. And I want to say this too. Wealth is not just this physical thing that we're accumulating. Wealth is love. Wealth is information. You know, uh, uh, pushing or creating generational wealth means creating that oral information, right? That oral history to our kids, and to really provide love and connection, and really show that those layers, the metaphysical layers that you can't put your finger on. So, kids.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's huge. And as a father myself, like that means a lot. And you know, yeah, I mean, again, that's a whole conversation in itself. But I deeply appreciate your wisdom and your presence and everything that you're bringing to the world. Through everything you're doing. I'm gonna link I'll link your free masterclass, also link your deeper courses that people can really dive into. And I would urge people that are listening to this, if you really like this conversation, to go check out Oto's courses and programs. And yeah, great person to work with. So thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I just want to plug something here at the end, if you're all
Sure,
right with it.
please.
So I have this new shirt. I'm actually wearing it right now. This is a 432 hertz mandala, and it's gold foil, and it's in partnership with One Golden Thread. So I don't know if you guys know that company. And so it's 100% organic with beechwood tree, and the high resonance of the mandala makes it a high functioning shirt. And so this is actually going to also be the entrance into my community. So you can actually get a month free access to my weekly lives. You'll get an NFT with this shirt, and also access to some discount for the products that I have. So if you guys want it, let me know. DM me and
Beautiful.
I'll send it to you.
I love that. No, I'm picking one of those up myself. That's an
There you go.
incredible shirt. And One Golden Thread is doing really wonderful work as it pertains to fashion and clothing, and sustainability. So that's awesome.
100%.
Where can people find you? I'll link everything, obviously, of course, but if people want to find you, where's the best place?
Yeah, if you guys go to my Instagram, it's at Oto Gomes, Otogomes. I have a lot of links on there. If you go to my links on the top, or you can go to my website and just learn more about me. It's otogomes.live, Otogomes.live.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you, brother. Anytime.